Are you saying that you would step aside and not compete for the head of the country to allow us to get through this crisis, or I'm unclear about your answer to the last question?
Well, I find it a strange question. Your CBC is asking me to step aside in the next election.
We're going to tear apart Mr. Trudeau for a couple of statements that he was making yesterday during his tariff press conference. And if there's time, we'll revisit a couple of clips from Pierre for today. So let's take a look at the first thing that Trudeau said. We are not going to be showing the entire press conference. Don't worry, it's only a couple of minutes between the different clips. So, clip number one.
Gillian Piper with Global News. Prime Minister, will you recall Parliament to pass a bill to help Canadian workers and end prorogation?
As you can see from our strong response package, as we spoke about with premiers this afternoon and have for many weeks, we have the tools to be able to support Canadians through this challenging time as it stands. This is a moment for Canadians to pull together, including Canadians of all different political parties. This is a moment where we need to set aside our differences and focus on delivering for Canadians, standing up for Canadians, and protecting the most successful political, military, economic, and security partnership the world has ever seen. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We have the tools to do it as a government right now, and we will keep doing it alongside our premiers and our partners.
So there's a lot that I would like to just tear into with that. The first thing I want to tear into is when he says he wants all the political parties to come together. Well, he wants them to come together, I guess, just not under the same roof that is in the roof called the House of Commons in Parliament. You stupid moron.
Right. If you didn't prorogue Parliament, they'd be there right now.
And then he says, well, we have all the tools that we need to deal with this. Actually, you don't. You really don't, Trudeau, because the number one tool that you need is a vote to actually use the $1.3 billion that you want to use for the border. You don't have that available to you. So you've been relying on the RCMP's current budget of buying a couple of helicopters and running over the border. Oh, this is effective.
Right,
really?
because getting more money is a confidence vote. And the NDP has said that they will vote down the government at the earliest opportunity. The Bloc and the Conservatives are already on board. They've been on board since September. It's just the NDP we're waiting for.
Like a couple of helicopters on what, an 8,000 kilometer border?
Well, and it was funny when we were talking to Lieutenant Colonel Redmond. He kind of had the same attitude. He's like, what are helicopters going to do?
Like, congrats.
Yeah.
You gonna wave again, like Forrest Gump? Come on. It's the most silly thing that
It's insulting. Yeah. It's not silly. It's insulting.
So that's the first thing. That's the first thing. But we'll come back to that.
President Trump said in the executive order that it's about the border and fentanyl. Do you think that this is what it's about?
We have one of the strongest, more secure borders in the world between Canada and the United States. As I said, less than 1% of fentanyl going into the United States come from Canada. Less than 1% of illegal migrants going into the United States come from Canada. That doesn't mean there isn't more to do. And that's why we've invested $1.3 billion in strengthening our borders. And we're seeing over the past number of weeks, past couple of months, the numbers significantly decrease at the border already. We are making progress in working together, including sending joint teams over to China to talk about the precursor chemicals that get developed into fentanyl all across North America. There are things that we can and must do together, and I understand the preoccupation the American president has with fentanyl deaths. We share those preoccupations. We've seen far too many communities across our country devastated by toxic drug supplies, by fentanyl, by opioid addictions. We have taken action over the years, but we're happy to do even more with the United States to counteract this horrific tragedy. That's why we have committed to doing even more and working alongside. But this trade action against Canada is not the best way we can actually work together to save lives.
That's disgusting. This from the man who is opening, or who was opening, safe injection sites all over the country. Do you notice how he calls it the toxic drug supply? All drugs are toxic. It doesn't matter. Like, you guys know, I used to work at a veterinary clinic, and some of the medications that we used, especially for anesthesia, were the exact same ones people use on the street. So whether you are taking drugs from the vet clinic or you're taking it from your dealer on the street, it will still kill you.
Think of it this way. Imagine somebody came to your house and was like, hey, listen, I got some fire to sell you. And the fire, it isn't the toxic fire that you have when you throw newspaper in. It's clean fire because we use real wood. So it's not going to burn you as bad.
Doesn't matter. Like, it
Fire
will
fire.
still drop you
It's
dead.
still going to kill you.
Yeah.
And this is the guy that literally turned Canada into a narcotic manufacturing hub. And you're saying you want to get these drugs off the face of the planet?
Which city was it recently where they had, like, it was the biggest drug bust, I think, ever in this country's history. It was like $84 million, and I don't recall which street drug it was, but...
Well, that was cocaine or something like that.
Possibly. It might have been Toronto, might have been outside Toronto, I can't remember. But, like, that is a lot of drugs. And then you say, oh, well, we've been working to prevent it. We've been working to stop it. You've been creating the conditions to enable this.
You're literally encouraging people. You're decriminalizing everything and saying, yeah, you know, it's okay. Oh, well, we're trying to reduce the stimulus.
No, they're trying to reduce the stigma is what they're trying to reduce. It's a joke. It's absolutely a joke, to the point where we can't even take our son to certain parks in this city anymore because of the needles on the ground, because of the risk. Like, it's ridiculous. We can't go anywhere with him in the lower city that we used to take him when we were a kid.
There's only one or two parks that we take him to now. And even then, we're very weary about doing that. So, but...
like broad daylight, I won't take him certain places anymore because of the risk with the needles, the drugs, the addicts. Like, communities should not be accepting of that.
Well, and I said we come back to it, and we're coming back to it. So he just said, well, we've invested $1.3 billion. Actually, you haven't, because that money hasn't been approved yet, so you haven't given it to anyone. And the fact that he then goes on to make these vague claims, oh, well, we've seen, the numbers come down significantly. Well, you haven't said what these numbers allegedly are, have you, Trudeau? So that means that you're talking out of your butt. Nobody believes you, because all you're saying is, oh, well, the numbers have come down. If you actually had the numbers, you would be firing them out. You'd be saying, since we've invested this much, we have seen numbers come down by X amount in this border crossing, by X amount in this border crossing, by X. You haven't said any of that. So it's garbage. Fact checking in real time. You haven't actually said any facts. You've said unverifiable statements. And that's one thing politicians will do to try and make it seem like they're progressing when they actually are not. So keep that one in mind. Anyway, number 3.
If President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us. Canada has critical minerals, reliable and affordable energy, stable democratic institutions, shared values, and the natural resources you need. Canada has the ingredients necessary to build a booming and secure partnership for the North American economy, and we stand at the ready to work together.
Wait a minute. Trudeau just said that we have the natural resources in the minerals and the energy and all this stuff.
We do, though.
We have all the stuff that you need, and we stand at the ready. Well, apparently you've been standing at the ready for the last 10 years doing nothing.
It's because there's no business case. Didn't you know that?
Right. There's no business case for anything. So
what a joke.
This is the double think right out of 1984. It's like, well, we have all this stuff. Dude, you've put in every regulation possible to prohibit people from extracting energy from Canada.
How many pipelines did they stop? How many mines did they stop? How much natural gas did they not allow to be dug up and exported? Like
it's absolutely insane.
It's a joke. It's an absolute joke.
Like, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to say, oh, well, we have all the stuff. And Trump's going to be like, really? I didn't realize that. Okay, we're going to take off the tariffs now. And then Trudeau's going to be like, ha, 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 you don't get anything because all my regulations are in there. Gotcha. Are you kidding me? This is one of the most stupidest statements that Trudeau has even made. But again, him, Karina Gold, Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, all of them seem to not care that there's this thing called video, and then there's this other thing called the internet. When you put them together, you can fact check anything that you say. So it is absolutely insane.
Hi, Jared Yeager here from the Western Standard. And if you could answer in French and English, please. So just hours ago, Trump said on Truth Social he believed Canada would, quote, cease to exist as a viable country, unquote, without the US, and hinted again that he won't end the tariffs until we become the 51st state. So I want to know, at what point is Canada's relationship with the US beyond repair? And is there even a path forward for reasonable negotiation with someone like him at the other end of the table?
Our friendship with the Americans is not based on any one politician. It is based on our centuries-long history of trade, of friendship, of common defense, of fighting on the battlefield, arms locked together against common enemies. We will continue to build that friendship with the people of the United States. But let me be clear, we are an independent and we are a proud nation. And we will come through this an independent and a proud sovereign nation. We will not back down. We will not cease. We will continue to march forward as proud Canadians. Thank you.
So I really like this answer from Pierre. This was a very prime ministerial answer that he gave. Because essentially the question was, oh, you know, Trump is saying this and Trump is saying that, and what does that mean about our relationship? And Pierre nailed this answer because he said, you know, just because Donald Trump is saying all this, that doesn't mean that the entire country, you know, shares that same opinion. Right now, they're in the very early days of a new mandate for a Republican-nominated president. But you're going to have a lot of Republican voters that are business owners, that buy lots of goods from Canada for their businesses, and they are going to be none too happy with the increase in price just because.
Or even everyday Americans who are going to fill up their cars and are like, wow, this costs 10% more than it used to? What's that about? Right?
So they're not going to be too happy about that. And Pierre actually lays out a plan that he has in how he's going to deal with Donald Trump. And one of the key pillars of his plan is a smart one, is reaching out to many of the business associations in the United States and working with them to put pressure on President Trump, because they're going to be paying 25% more for everything that comes into the United States. And for the folks that may not understand what a tariff is, so a tariff is basically a tax. That's all it is.
The manufacturer doesn't get it. The government gets it.
Right. So let's say you're buying a stack of bread from Canada for $100 as a business, and then you're turning around and you're taking all of those loaves of bread and then you're selling them for
$2 each.
Yeah, and so you're going to make $200, right? So you're making $100 profit. This tariff comes in, you're going to have to pay 25% more. So instead of $100, you're going to be paying $125. Well, you still need that profit margin, right? Your gross profit. So
So if you sell them for $2 each, you're still only making $200. Now you're netting $75 instead of $100.
So what you're going to do is you're going to increase that total profit back up to $100, and you're going to be paying more than $2, or you're going to be selling it for more than $2 a loaf of bread. And that's where all of this happens. So it gets passed down to the consumer. And here's the thing. Trudeau is going to put all these tariffs in. He hasn't talked about where that money's going. That's probably going to go right into the government coffers. This is where him and Pierre are very different. And you're not going to see a lot of mainstream media talk about this. Pierre has said that he's going to take, he would enact tariffs as well, but every single dollar would go back to workers. That's the difference.
Well, and the thing with tariffs is, as a president or as a prime minister or as a House of Commons, if you want to have tariffs on certain goods, it needs to be something that you produce in your own country, but that the other country either produces more of or they produce it for cheaper, so that when they sell it to you, it costs less. So you're trying to promote people to buy products domestically instead of having them imported. Let's use the example of lumber. If I sell $100 worth of lumber to the States and they can produce that exact same amount of lumber for, say, $120, but they want to encourage Americans to buy American lumber and put a 25% tariff on our lumber. Now when the Canadian lumber comes over, instead of being $100, it's $125. So it's just a little bit more expensive than what they're producing at home. It encourages people to buy the American-made lumber as Americans because it's $5 cheaper.
Which means that Americans start buying much less of Canadian goods, which means that the Canadian businesses are going to have much lower sales, which then means they're going to have much lower profit, which then means they're probably going to have to cut jobs in order to actually absorb that profit loss. And in some cases, they may go out of business.
The goal of tariffs is, again, it's when your country produces something, but another country produces it usually for cheaper. So you want to keep the money in your own country by applying tariffs to the other country's goods.
So anyway, there's one more clip I want to show you about Pierre. And that's where somebody from CBC asked him a question.
Sorry. Who's next? Sorry.
I'm being pushed out a lot. I guess CBC is allowed to ask questions now. You have talked about.
Sometimes we like to hear from local media.
Do you believe the government's promise of $155 billion in counter tariffs is enough? And what would you do differently to get the president to change course? And to clarify your last question, are you saying that you would step aside and not compete for the head of the country to allow us to get through this crisis? Or I'm unclear about your answer to the last question.
Well, I find it a strange question. Your CBC is asking me to step aside in the next election. It's a very strange request. No, we're not going to suspend democracy. The Canadian people run this country, and they will choose the next prime minister. Thank you very much.
That's the first time I'm seeing that, and I'm not surprised that CBC asked that question in the way they did.
So, to be objective, it's hard to know. If I'm giving CBC the benefit of the doubt, which nobody is willing to do, but if you're giving CBC the benefit of the doubt, one of the possible rationales for their question is, are you saying you would go back to Parliament, not vote non-confidence in order to actually deal with Trump?
Keep the government going, yeah.
But if that's the way she meant it, she worded it extremely poorly. Because she said, are you saying you're not going to compete to be leader of the country?
Well, and she was so concerned about the smaller news outlets getting to ask questions first.
It's our turn to ask questions.
Earn it. Okay? Earn it.
Well, and you guys get to ask questions at literally every single press conference across the country. Some of these press conferences that Pierre is at, this is the only press conference that these smaller outlets get to go to. So maybe be quiet and let the smaller outlets actually get their questions in, you know, to support local media like you guys, you know, always try and preach at committee, and your president always tries to say, oh, you know, we support local media,
except
when we want to. Yeah, I know. Except when we want to ask a question. But yeah, CBC's new president is all concerned. It's like, did you not know that this is going to be a problem before you took the job, lady? Like,
DI hire.
Didn't earn it. So anyway, but this is the problem. But this is where it's great that Pierre just says don't be disrespecting local media. They're just as important as you, CBC.
In
Maybe
fact,
more so.
most of us do a better job.